Reading more of Thoreau's A Life. We're at page 264. There's nothing quite like an author's excitement upon beholding his first book. On May 26, 1849, Henry Thoreau took the train to Boston to pick up his author's copy of A Week on the Concord and Merrimack River, a thick, plain, brown-bound volume. He left one copy to be mailed to Blake in Worcester and stopped off to give another to Bronson Alcott in person. Alcott sat down and read it through in 2 days straight. Quote, an American book, he admired, quote, worthy to stand beside Emerson's essays on my shelves. Other responses were slower in coming. The first major public notice and the most nationally prominent, appeared 2 weeks later on the front page of Greeley's New York Tribune, and it set a deeply damaging tone. A week it opened, if not quite a, quote, fresh, original, thoughtful work, was very nearly so, and Thoreau's natural descriptions had a Aeonian sweetness, but his verse was halting, his philosophy execrable, a bad specimen of a dubious and dangerous school. First of all was the blasphemy. Mr. Thoreau dared to assert that the sacred books of the Brahmins were, quote, nothing inferior to the Christian Bible. A revolting attack on good sense, good taste, and all received opinion, which the author should humble himself by using the pages of the Tribune to retract. Thoreau was deeply hurt, for he assumed the anonymous reviewer was Greeley himself, his trusted friend, perhaps in an attempt to whip up another controversy. Sadly, his anger and blame were misplaced, for the review was written by someone else, probably George Ripley. As for Emerson, he said nothing except once in a letter to an English friend to whom he complained 4 days before Thoreau picked up his author's copy that, quote, there is nothing very good to tell you of the people here. No books, no poets, no artistes. He mentioned Thoreau's book only as an afterthought. When Theodore Parker asked him to review it in the Massachusetts Quarterly Review, Emerson pointedly refused. Quote, I am not the man to write the notice of Thoreau's book. I am of the same clan and parish. Such qualms had not prevented him from writing helpful reviews of other friends' work, but for Thoreau he offered instead a list of names of potential reviewers. Parker, long wary of Thoreau, found to his surprise that he rather liked the book, which he sent not to any of those whom Emerson had suggested, but to that emerging arbiter of literary good taste, James Russell Lowell. It could have been worse. Lowell procrastinated for 6 months, but when he finally got around to writing his review, it was surprisingly balanced. He found much to praise in the book's tasteful parts, particularly in Thoreau's enchanting nature descriptions. Worst he could say, aside from dismissing Thoreau's verses as versification, was that the book's many digressions hit, quote, like snaps, jolting us head foremost out of our places as we are rowing placidly upstream or drifting down. Out of proportion and out of place, they, quote, mar our merrimacking dreadfully. We were bid to a river party not to be preached at. Aunt Maria thought Lowell's review was beautiful, so just and pleasant, and some parts of it so laughable that I enjoyed reading it very much. But by the time Lowell had his say, it was December 1849, and much too late. The book was dead. The book died. I haven't read the book. The problem was not the number of reviews. Emerson helped Thoreau mail 75 copies to friends and possible reviewers, and it was widely reviewed in the United States and England, nor was it the nature of the reviews. Many were favorable, and even the negative ones could have excited interest. The problem was Munro. He didn't publish books. He only printed them. He refused to advertise, and he had no distribution network. One could purchase Thoreau's book only by visiting Munro's shop in Boston or by ordering it from Munro by mail. This business model had worked for Emerson, who was already well known and whose fame was centered in Boston. But for a first book by an unknown author seeking a national audience, it was a disaster. Hawthorne had also taken a hit from Munro 3 years after Munro printed in his Twice Told Tales in 1841. 600 copies remained in storage, unsold. Emerson tried to steer Fuller's first book to Munro too, and a naive Thoreau had urged her to publish it at her own expense. But Fuller wisely took Summer on the Lakes to a publisher who spared her from assuming the risk for books they could not or would not market. Thoreau, by contrast, was in real trouble. His book sold barely over 200 copies. The Man Who Took Pride in Building a House for $28.12 owed his publisher $290, a year's ordinary wages. It would take him 4 years to pay it off, dollar by hard-earned dollar. Perhaps the satisfying irony of Thoreau's life is that the book he went to Bolton to write, an elegy to his brother and closest friend, became an elegy to so many other losses. His sister Helen, his friendship with Emerson, his hopes for a literary career. Helen died of tuberculosis on June 14, 1849, just 2 weeks after her brother's book became a reality. Long enough to share the family's pride and joy, for surely there was some despite the misgivings. Of the 4 children, only Henry and Sophia remained. The women of the family laid Helen out and stayed in the family parlor, as was the custom. 4 days later, in a gesture of deep respect, both the town's ministers, the Unitarian Basil Frost and the Trinitarians, William Mather, performed her funeral in the Thoreau's parlor, honoring Helen's refusal to attend their churches since she found their doors open to slave owners, but closed to the defenders of the enslaved. Reverend Mather's wife remembered how Henry, who also never went to church, sat seemingly unmoved until the service was concluded. As they were about to lift the bier, he stood to wind a music box to a tune, quote, of the sweetest, tenderest minor strains that seemed like no earthly tune. All sat quietly till it was through. William Lloyd Garrison printed a passionate remembrance of Helen's years of service to the abolitionist movement in the Liberator, honoring her patient investigation of the truth, her candor in acknowledging it, and her moral courage in acting on her convictions. In his farewell poem, Henry said that, quote, regret doth bind me faster to thee now than neighborhood confined. What he regretted he did not say. He may not have been as close to the cerebral Helen, she's cerebral, as he was to the plucky Sophia. But she was his moral lodestar. The minister's wife was not alone in suspecting Helen had, quote, more sympathy in his peculiar ways, perhaps, than any other. By fall 1849, it was painfully clear to Thoreau that the book he wrote to prove himself to Emerson had failed to please him. Worse, by following Emerson's advice to print it, no matter the risk, Thoreau precipitated himself into ruinous financial debt. Tension built through the spring and summer, even as Emerson complained of Thoreau's elm tree stiffness. He distressed Thoreau, stammered in his journal, quote, I was never so near my friend when he was bodily present as when he was absent, and yet I am indirectly accused by this friend of coldness and ingenuousness when I cannot speak for warmth and sincerity. The crisis broke in September. In private, Thoreau spat with cold and bitter fury. Quote, I had a friend, I wrote a book, I asked my friend's criticism, I never got but praise for what was good in it. My friend became estranged from me, and then I got blame for all that was bad. And so I got at last the criticism which I wanted. While my friend was my friend, he flattered me, and I never heard the truth from him. But when he became my enemy, he shot it to me and on a poisoned arrow. There is as much hatred as love in the world. Hate is a good critic. Talking about hate as a good critic. Let's stop there. We are talking about his first book, the week on the Concord and Merrimack River. The book was dead, but it's still alive. You can buy it and read it. So you can bring it back to life. I'm gonna get the book and bring it back to life. The Walden's very much alive.